Hey everybody, welcome back to Harris Family Adventures. This is a little bit of a different video because, as you can see, we're at our house. And I'm gonna do this one solo, and we're gonna go through how homeschooling is going. So this is one of the videos I had made right when we kind of decided to do all of this, is how am I gonna do homeschooling? Now, for some context, I was an elementary school teacher for 5 years and then worked as an elementary school counselor for the years since then. So I have experience in education. I'm not coming at this, with no experience, but we have no friends or family who homeschool. So this was not something that I could just call my friends and be like, so how do you homeschool? Because I didn't have anybody. So I'm gonna run through the different ways that we've set it up, and of course it has changed and it will probably continue to change. This is probably a little over halfway through our school year. Technically the school year is July 1st through June 30th. We did start before July 1st. We started probably midway through June. And I do plan to be done around the time that the school year ends here for public school students, and then we'll both be headed back to public school next year. So if you're new, we are taking this year off. We spent the first part of the school year doing some traveling. You can see we have lots of videos about that. The second part of the year, we don't have any for sure travel plans. We've just been trying to do things around here, like going to museums and visiting the Capitol building. We might do some day trips and that kind of thing, but that's besides the point. Those are field trips. That's different. Let me show you what we've been doing so far. Okay, so first of all, this is Reese's computer. He's had this for a while. We got it from him a couple years ago. And what I did pretty early in the year is I went through and I did a tab on each week. So each week has a tab with a to-do list. Sorry if that's kind of coming across difficult to see. And in each one, I have the week's to-do list. So we've done this different ways. We've done this like, we'll just see how far we get today. We've done this like, let's take one class at a time. This just seems to be working best for us. It really allows us the flexibility, but also that accountability where like we need to get these things done. And it's because I have put these deadlines in place, but it gives us some, things to work towards. So every week he has to do an exercising for an hour, and that's always very easy for him to do. That's always the first thing gets crossed off the list. And then if you see those links, those are links to Khan Academy. So we have finished biology, we have finished physics. Those are both middle school classes. Now we're doing middle school earth and space science. So I went ahead and it took a lot of time, but I went ahead and just put links in so that we could just easily click on it. So we're doing all of those free classes there. Let's see, we're also doing our current math class. We've done a couple different math classes. So right now we're doing algebra basics. We are just about finished with US history. We have another class lined up with civics and government after that. Then you can see I have reading, big book, and violin. Now violin, it always starts with an hour. He's done 15 minutes this week, so he went ahead and changed that. So now he only has 45 minutes left. So we can always kind of look ahead to what's coming and go back. I'm gonna need to go further into that US history, into our next lesson. So US history, you can see is almost done. His computer's a little bit slow. This is the last part of that US history. So actually the following week, we don't have anything listed, and I will need to go into our new class and find different components to work on. Here is how we kind of handle the Khan Academy classes. Sorry, we have some sickness going on here. So like this is the book that we used obviously for grammar, and then we went ahead and wrote and biology. Typically what we will do is sit on the couch together and we'll go through the classes together. I think that's probably one of the misconceptions. I thought he'd kind of be working on his own and I would step in if needed, but it just works a lot better if we're just sitting there next to each other and we can talk about things and clear up confusions as we go. So this is my handwriting. So yes, it is me taking notes, but as I take notes, I'll say, oh, okay, you just read about relative clauses. What were those again? And so then he, explains what they are to me, and then he reads them again and I write them down. In Khan Academy, they'll have then quizzes or tests, and so I'll say, oh, we have that in our notes, let's go back and look. So we just have a variety of notebooks. You can get these for about 10 cents usually in late July or August. So these are just extras that I had. This was our first math one. We have filled that entire thing. Computer programming. Now, you didn't see computer programming on our to-do list. It was really fun for a while. I do feel like Khan Academy, the computer programming, it gets really difficult, and then it's hard to even know what to do next. He didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to do. And it was just really, really involved, like way more information than I thought we needed. So the U.S. history course has been really interesting. I will say, I think it's for an AP U.S. history course. He is in 5th grade. Sorry, I should have mentioned that. He's in 5th grade. So, you know, some of the subject areas are a little bit different to read about. Like we read about the AIDS epidemic and that type of thing. We're very open in our family, so it hasn't been too hard. But some of the concepts are a little bit tricky as well. You can see this was reading and vocab, and I'll talk. So we did the Khan Academy reading and vocab for 6th grade. Did not like those. I did not like those. This is also now turned into our math notebook because we needed more room. We did the personal finance class, which was awesome. We will be keeping this notebook because it has a lot of good information. This is where we did physics, and we're also doing earth science in there. We just hadn't added that on. So those are the Khan Academy classes. Now again, it says reading. Like I said, we already did the Khan Academy reading classes, but when we went to Breckenridge, they had a used bookstore, and I found this. So this is a textbook. It is a, I don't know if you can say that 5. It is a 5th grade reading textbook. Houghton Mifflin is a really good publisher. Our school district is not currently using their materials, but have in the past. So this is basically an anthology. So there's a whole mixtures of stories broken into themes. And so what I did is I went through and divided the book along the year, and then each week we have a certain number of pages that we read, and they always have really good questions with them. Reese doesn't write down the answers, but we talk about the answers. And then this is the final component. I'm actually kind of gonna look for a new one because as you can see, we've done quite a bit of it. We tear them out when we finish the page. So this is what we refer to as big book because it started as very big. And I got this at Costco, you can see, for $15. So it has a lot of different components. There's like spelling lists. So usually each week we have a spelling list that we not only practice the spellings, but we use them as definitions, or sometimes they'll have analogies or that type of thing. There's always some practice using some proofreading with those same spelling words written in cursive, and then a language connection. So each week we have one of those. We still have a couple of those left. They also have a grammar compartment. They also have a math, but we are just about done with our math skills, and they're all here. I also went through as I was doing this, and I put what week we were doing this to kind of help me. So there's, I guess this is a good way, there's language arts as well. And then there are writing skills. So those are how we've covered those areas. And there's just a couple more things that we do. All right, so I said there was a couple other things that we do. In our state, we are required to also address health. So I had previously, earlier this summer, taken it upon myself to find some different videos. I really like Brain Pop, and I had a subscription when I was a teacher. I don't have a subscription now. You can find a lot of them for free if you just Google it. They're probably bootlegged, but you know, those are really good starting off points for us to have conversations about different health things. So yes, that's another thing that we do. And also violin, if you saw violin. I played violin from 5th grade through my senior year of high school, and my parents still had my violin. Reese did violin through his public school last year, and we needed to rent a half-size one, but he's grown a lot, and so he was ready for a full-size violin. So we actually are using my old violin, and this was a book that I just picked up. We have a store called the Violin Shop. And so this is just kind of a practice book that we like to use. It has, I really, really like it. It has good scales in there. It talks about finger placement for, you know, half steps and whole steps and that type of thing. So I really have been liking that one. And then what Reese really likes actually is I just, again, Googled free like beginner, not that he's a pure beginner, but free beginner violin sheet music, and I found probably about 10 things like this, and so I printed those off, and he actually really likes to play those. So it depends. Sometimes for violin I'm sitting right next to him. I would say it's about half and half, that I'm sitting right next to him and I'm saying, now we're going to practice this, let's break down, you know, bar by bar, measure by measure, note by note, how this song needs to be played. And then other times I'll just say, hey, I need to get some things done. Why don't you crank out 10 minutes of violin? I'll even set a timer for you. So he practices the violin. Usually it's an hour a week. If it's a short week, like around Christmas time, you know, some weeks it was just a practice for half an hour. But yeah, that pretty much encapsulates, like I said, we do lots of field trips too, especially when we're traveling. I just thought like, okay, well, we spent the day the Tea Party Museum, like that covers history. So I think for history that week, then what I had him do is like find it. I had found an article about the Tea Party and I had asked him to read that. So I tried to make it more connected. So that's what's nice about this all being online. I was gonna write it all down, but all online, it's so easy for me to go in and edit and change things around. And like I said, it's January, so this could easily change a lot more as we go as well. Oh, and one last thing, I do have some cursive books. You'll see this says it's for 3rd and 4th grade, but I don't think cursive is very important. I know some people think it's a dying art. I do not use cursive in my life, but I do think it can help. I know research shows it can help with penmanship, and his penmanship can sometimes be a little tricky. So as we start to kind of wrap up some of the things, that will be something that's incorporated more often as well. Let me know if you have any questions below and I'll try my best to answer them. Bye. Hey guys, I was just putting the video together and realized I didn't really tell you actually how it's going. I told you how we're doing it, the logistics, which I think is important, but how is it going to be a homeschooling mom and to have a 5th grader homeschooled? Because again, we didn't have any family or friends that have done this. A lot of our family and friends is involved in education though, so they're like, how is it going? And I do really enjoy it for the most part. Like I said, I think in my mind, it was gonna be me kind of, you know, like Reese working somewhere in our house and me like checking in on him, but him being pretty independent. And I think by virtue of a couple of different things, it's just not how it's worked out. I think we did choose classes that were maybe a little more challenging than he could do just on his own. I think the Khan Academy videos are overall really good, but there are some times that they're a little bit lacking. And what's so nice is having one student is that, you know, there's some things that we're like, well, we watched this video, we pretty much get it. And by we, I mean, you know, Reese and I. Let's go ahead and move on to the practice or the quiz or the test or whatever. And then there's other times that the video finishes and I can tell that there's still some confusion. And so then we're able to take that time and really work through it. And that was part of the reason, I don't know, like I thought about originally we're doing 3.5 hours a day. But then it was kind of just a watch the clock kind of situation and run out the clock situation. I was hesitant to do it like we need to get through this unit, because then it's just trying to get through the unit as fast as possible also. So I think there's definitely pros and cons to both ways. Like I said, I do really like the system of, you know, every week having a list of things to do. So today is Tuesday. I'm not when you're seeing this, but in our world it's Tuesday. And yesterday we did history, and that was all. We studied the 1990s, the generation where I was growing up. And that was all we got to. So it didn't take as long. But then today we spent some more time. We also do read alouds. So we've been really working on some read alouds through the My America books, which I've really enjoyed, and Reese really enjoys those as well. So it's not always, you know, if it's not on the list, it's not school. Of course, you know that even if you're not a homeschooler. But yes, overall, I really like it. It's different than I thought it would be. I think it's different for Reese than he thought it would be. I think he also visioned like me just telling him things to do and him doing it, but it all being maybe a little bit easier for him to do, and that he'd be able to crank it out pretty quickly. So I think we're spending more time on school than he thought, and we're going a little bit more in depth on things than maybe you'd be able to. And that's the thing with homeschooling, there's no getting away with something. Like if you don't know it, your teacher's sitting right next to you, the teacher is, you know, saying, okay, here's the first question that we have on this quiz. What one do you think it is? Now, what's nice is that we're able to, you know, if he's like, I think the answer is B, then I'm able to say, well, tell me why you think it's B. And then he'll say, well, because this and this. And it was like, that's true, but let's look back in our notes. So I think that's another nice thing, is I've been able to really model like note-taking skills. And, you know, I'll say things like, oh, that's bolded. I bet that's going to show up on a quiz later, or on a test later. Let's make sure we really get that down in our notes. It's also been really good for Reese because he reads I would say Khan Academy is 75% articles, 25% videos based on the classes that we've taken. And so he's reading those articles out loud. And I think just for anybody, you know, reading out loud goes slower than reading by myself. So if I'm just kind of sitting next to him and I'm kind of reading it myself, it does take a little bit more time, but I think that's a great skill to have to work on fluency and reading comprehension and all of those types of things, even if we are doing science or history at that moment. So overall, I really like it. I would not want to do it with more kids. I don't know how people do it if they have multiple children. Just because the way that we're doing it, where I'm sitting next to him and we're kind of doing it all together, that would be really tricky. But I do think he's learned a lot. It'll be really interesting as he goes to middle school next year, because we have done pretty much solely middle school and higher classes. It'll be interesting to see if any of those skills, like when they start talking about, you know, graphing, line, and intercept, like if he'll be like, oh, I know all of those types of things already, or if they will have flown through his head as once we finish that unit. So it'll be interesting. But overall, you guys know, if you watch my other videos, I like giving things a number ranking. I would give homeschooling an 8 out of 10. I really would. What could make it better? I guess if we chose some easier materials and he was able to do it completely on his own, and that would free up more of my time, but also not working currently. I have more time. You know, sometimes I just make a list in my head of like, okay, I need to get to the store today and I want to make sure I vacuum today and that type of thing. And I'm like, okay, and I need to fit in, you know, but we have the time. It's just adjusting to that. And Reese was more excited. I will say he's never been a big fan of school. I think he likes homeschool. I was gonna say better. He misses the social aspect of it. We do have him involved still with, you know, some sports that he does. He has another sport thing coming up. We live close enough to his old school that he goes up there a couple times a week around dismissal time and can see his friends. So I know he's looking forward to middle school for that, but I do think he likes the flexibility of homeschooling and kind of how we can structure our days a little bit different. And, you know, today we spent a lot of time at Barnes & Noble, and he just went around and chose different books, and we got a drink and a Rice Krispie treat and sat there and he read. And that's not something that you can do on a random Tuesday in January typically. So I think he would give it a 6 out of 10 because it's not quite easy peasy lemon squeezy like he was thinking it was gonna be, but I think overall he likes it. So now I really think I'm done.